My name is Emma Rodriguez, and for the first 30 years of my life, I was told by almost everyone around me that I would never amount to anything significant. Teachers, family members, employers, and even friends had convinced themselves, and tried to convince me, that I lacked the intelligence, talent, and determination necessary to achieve meaningful success. Standing here today, holding the National Excellence in Innovation Award, I can barely comprehend the journey that brought me from a place of complete despair to this moment of vindication. But to understand the magnitude of this achievement, you need to know where I started and the obstacles that nearly destroyed my dreams before I even knew I had any. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, where expectations were low and opportunities were scarce. My parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, were hard-working people who had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but hope and determination. They worked multiple jobs, my mother as a house cleaner and my father in construction, to provide for our family of 5 children, while my parents were loving and supportive in their own way. They had been conditioned by their own experiences to believe that people like us were meant to work with our hands, not our minds. Education beyond high school was seen as an unrealistic luxury that our family couldn't afford, both financially and practically. Mija, my mother would say when I expressed interest in college, education is good, but you need to be realistic about your place in the world. Focus on learning skills that will help you get a steady job and support a family. This perspective was reinforced by almost every authority figure in my life. My elementary school teachers, overwhelmed by large class sizes and limited resources, had little time or energy to nurture individual potential. I was consistently placed in average or below average academic tracks, not because of any formal assessment of my abilities, but because of assumptions about my background and family circumstances. Mrs. Henderson, my 5th grade teacher, had been particularly devastating in her assessment of my potential. During a parent-teacher conference that I accidentally overheard, she told my parents, "Emma is a sweet girl, but she's not academically gifted. You should encourage her to focus on practical skills rather than setting unrealistic expectations about college or professional careers." Those words burned themselves into my memory and shaped my self-perception for years to come. If a teacher, someone who was supposed to recognize and nurture potential, believed I wasn't capable of academic success, then it must be true. High school brought new challenges and fresh confirmations of my supposed limitations. My guidance counselor, Mr. Patterson, automatically enrolled me in vocational tracks without ever asking about my interests or aspirations. When I expressed curiosity about advanced science courses, he dismissed my interest with a condescending smile. "Emma, those classes are very demanding," he said. "Students from your background typically struggle with the advanced coursework. Why don't we focus on getting you prepared for a nice career in cosmetology or office administration?" The message was clear. I was expected to aim low and be grateful for whatever modest opportunities came my way, but despite the constant discouragement, something inside me refused to accept these limitations. I had always been curious about how things worked, fascinated by technology, and drawn to problem-solving in ways that my family and teachers either didn't notice or didn't value. I spent hours at the public library, teaching myself about computers, reading about scientific discoveries, and dreaming about possibilities that everyone around me insisted were beyond my reach. The librarian, Mrs. Chan, was one of the few adults who encouraged my intellectual curiosity, though even she seemed surprised by my interests. "You're very bright, Emma," she would say, "but you need to be practical about your future. Maybe you could become a computer technician or work in data entry." Even the people who meant to be supportive couldn't envision me achieving anything beyond modest, working-class success. My family's financial struggles made pursuing higher education seem impossible. By my senior year of high school, I was working 25 hours a week at a fast food restaurant to help support my family while maintaining decent grades, despite being in non-challenging courses. When I mentioned to my parents that I was interested in applying to college, their reaction was a mixture of pride and concern. "We're proud that you want to learn more," my father said, "but college is very expensive and we can't help you pay for it. Maybe you should work for a few years, save money, and then think about taking some classes at the community college." The message, though delivered with love, was clear: my dreams would have to wait for practical considerations, and by the time those considerations were addressed, the dreams would likely have faded away. My high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Brooks, delivered what felt like the final blow to my academic aspirations during my senior year. I had been struggling in his class, not because I lacked interest or ability, but because I was working so many hours that I had little time for studying, and the foundational knowledge I needed had never been properly developed in my earlier education. "Emma," he said after I received a D on a major exam, "I think you need to accept that science isn't your strong suit. You're a hard worker, and that's admirable, but some people just aren't cut out for technical fields. You should focus on areas where you can be successful." That conversation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and I remember walking home feeling like every door to my future had been slammed shut. If I couldn't succeed in high school chemistry, how could I ever dream of pursuing the kind of technical career that had always fascinated me? But it was during this period of deepest discouragement that I had an encounter that would change the trajectory of my life. I was working the evening shift at the restaurant when a customer came in who would become my unlikely mentor. Dr. Sarah. Kim was a software engineer who had stopped for dinner after a long day at the tech company where she worked. She was friendly and talkative, and during a slow period, we struck up a conversation about technology. "You seem to know a lot about computers for someone working in food service," she observed after I helped her troubleshoot a problem with her laptop. "I teach myself things online," I explained. "I've always been interested in how technology works. But everyone tells me I'm not smart enough for that kind of career." Dr. Kim looked at me with an expression I had never seen from an adult before: genuine surprise and concern. "Who told you that you're not smart enough?" she asked, when I explained the years of discouragement I had received from teachers, counselors, and family members. Dr. Kim shook her head in disbelief. "Emma, intelligence isn't determined by your zip code or your family's income level. Some of the most brilliant people I know came from backgrounds similar to yours. The difference is that they had someone who believed in them and helped them develop their potential." She gave me her business card and made an offer that seemed too good to be true. "If you're serious about learning technology, I'd like to help you. I can provide mentorship, recommend resources, and help you understand what it really takes to succeed in this field. But you have to be willing to work harder than you've ever worked before." I accepted her offer immediately, though I had no idea how dramatically it would change my life. Over the following months, Dr. Kim became the mentor I had never had. She helped me understand that my struggles in school had less to do with my intellectual capacity and more to do with the systemic disadvantages I had faced: inadequate preparation, low expectations, and lack of support. "Emma," she explained, "during one of our weekly meetings, you've been swimming upstream your entire life without realizing it. The fact that you've maintained your curiosity and determination despite years of discouragement actually demonstrates exceptional strength and intelligence." Under Dr. Kim's guidance, I began to see myself differently. She helped me understand that intelligence comes in many forms, that academic success is largely about having the right support and preparation, and that my background had actually given me valuable perspectives and problem-solving skills that many of my more privileged peers lacked. But perhaps most importantly, Dr. Kim helped me develop a plan for overcoming the practical obstacles that stood between me and my goals. "You can't change your past," she said, "but you can control your future. It's going to require sacrifice, creativity, and persistence, but you absolutely have the ability to succeed in technology if that's what you want." Together, we developed a strategy that would allow me to pursue higher education while managing my family's financial needs. I would start at community college while working part-time, transfer to a four-year university, and focus on building practical skills that would make me employable even before I completed my degree. The plan was ambitious and would require years of working and studying simultaneously, but for the first time in my life, I had a clear path forward and someone who believed in my ability to follow it. As I prepared to graduate from high school and begin this new chapter of my life, I reflected on all the people who had told me I would never succeed. Their words had been painful and discouraging, but they had also given me something valuable: a deep understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated and dismissed. I made a promise to myself that night: I would not only prove them wrong about my own potential, but I would also use whatever success I achieved to help other young people who were being told the same limiting messages that had nearly derailed my dreams. I had no way of knowing then that this promise would eventually lead me to develop innovations that would help millions of students overcome educational barriers. Or that I would one day stand on a national stage accepting an award for excellence in innovation. All I knew was that I was finally ready to stop accepting other people's limitations and start discovering my own possibilities. The girl who had been told she would never amount to anything was about to begin a journey that would transform not only her own life, but the lives of countless others who had been similarly underestimated and dismissed. Why real education was about to begin, and it would teach me lessons that no classroom could provide about resilience, determination, and the power of refusing to accept other people's narrow definitions of what was possible. The next 10 years of my life were a testament to what becomes possible when determination meets opportunity, even when that opportunity has to be created from scratch. The journey from community college to national recognition was filled with obstacles that would have derailed me if I hadn't learned to view every setback as a stepping stone rather than a roadblock. My first semester at Phoenix Community College was a revelation. For the first time in my educational experience, I was in an environment where my background was seen as an asset rather than a limitation. Many of my classmates were working adults, parents, and people who had taken non-traditional paths to education. My professors, particularly in the computer science program, were focused on practical skills and real-world applications rather than theoretical knowledge that seemed disconnected from actual problem-solving. Dr. Martinez, my introduction to programming instructor, became another crucial mentor in my journey. Unlike my high school teachers, she recognized that intelligence often manifests differently in students from diverse backgrounds. "Emma," she said after I had submitted a particularly creative solution to a coding assignment, "you have an intuitive understanding of how to make technology work for people rather than the other way around. That's a rare gift, and it's exactly what the tech industry needs more of." Her encouragement was transformative because it helped me understand that my perspective as someone who had struggled with systemic barriers actually gave me insights that could be valuable in developing solutions for other people facing similar challenges. While maintaining a 4.0 GPA at community college, I was working 30 hours a week at a local tech support company that Dr. Kim had helped me find. The job was entry-level, but it gave me hands-on experience with the kind of real-world technology problems that textbooks couldn't teach. It was during this period that I began to notice patterns in the technical support calls I was handling. Many of the people who called for help were students struggling with educational technology that was supposed to make learning easier but instead created additional barriers for people who lacked technical background or reliable internet access. "This software is supposed to help my daughter with her math homework," one frustrated mother told me, "but it's so complicated that I can't even figure out how to log in, and the instructions assume we have knowledge that we just don't have." These conversations planted the seeds of an idea that would eventually transform my career and impact millions of students worldwide. After 2 years at community college, I transferred to Arizona State University with a full scholarship that I had earned through academic excellence and a compelling personal essay about overcoming educational barriers. The transition to a 4-year university brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to develop the ideas that had been forming during my community college years. Why computer science professors at ASU were initially skeptical of my background and my ideas about making technology more accessible to underserved populations. "Emma," said Dr. Williams, my software engineering professor, "your ideas about educational accessibility are admirable, but they're not technically sophisticated enough for serious academic consideration. You should focus on more advanced algorithmic problems if you want to be taken seriously in this field." But I had learned from Dr. Kim and Dr. Martinez that innovation often comes from understanding problems that others overlook or dismiss as unimportant. Instead of abandoning my focus on accessibility, I began developing technical solutions that were both sophisticated and practical. My senior capstone project was a mobile application that used artificial intelligence to adapt educational content to different learning styles and technological literacy levels. The app could automatically simplify complex instructions, provide multiple explanation formats for the same concept, and work effectively on older devices with limited internet connectivity. The project required me to master advanced concepts in machine learning, user interface design, And mobile development, exactly the kind of technical sophistication that Dr. Williams had said my ideas lacked. When I presented the project to a panel of professors and industry professionals, the response was overwhelmingly positive. This is exactly the kind of innovation that the education technology industry needs, said Jennifer Park, a venture capitalist who had been invited to evaluate student projects. You've identified a real problem and developed a technically elegant solution that could have massive impact. Ms. Park's enthusiasm led to my first job offer at EDU Tech Solutions, a startup company that was developing educational software for K-12 schools. The position was as a junior developer, but it gave me the opportunity to work on products that directly addressed the accessibility problems I had experienced firsthand. However, my early months at EDU Tech Solutions were frustrating in ways I hadn't anticipated. Despite my technical skills and deep understanding of the problems we were trying to solve, my ideas were consistently dismissed or marginalized by senior developers who seemed to view accessibility features as unnecessary. Complications. Emma, these accessibility features are nice to have, said my supervisor, Mark Chen, but they add development time and complexity that our clients aren't asking for. We need to focus on core functionality that will appeal to schools with adequate technology infrastructure. The irony wasn't lost on me that a company supposedly dedicated to educational innovation was perpetuating the same exclusionary thinking that had nearly derailed my own education, but rather than becoming discouraged, I used my evenings and weekends to continue developing my accessibility-focused applications independently. I knew from my own experience and my conversations with Dr. Kim that the most significant innovations often come from people who are willing to work on problems that others consider unimportant or unsolvable. After 18 months at EDU Tech Solutions, I made the decision to leave and start my own company. It was a terrifying leap that required me to use my savings, take on significant debt, and work from my tiny apartment while trying to develop products that could compete with established companies. My parents were concerned about my decision to leave a stable job to pursue what seemed like an impossible dream. Mija, my mother said, you have a good job with benefits. Why would you risk everything to start a business that might fail? I understood their concern, but I also knew that I had reached a point where playing it safe felt more dangerous than taking risks. I had spent too many years accepting other people's limitations to settle for a career that didn't allow me to pursue the innovations I knew were needed. Inclusive Tech, the company I founded in my apartment, started with a single product, an educational platform that could automatically adapt to different learning styles, language preferences, and technological capabilities. The platform used machine learning algorithms to analyze how individual students interacted with content and then modified the presentation to optimize comprehension and engagement. The first year was brutal. I was working 16-hour days, living on ramen noodles and coffee, and facing constant rejection from potential investors who didn't understand why accessibility features were worth the additional development complexity. Emma, your technology is impressive, said one venture capitalist during a pitch meeting, but the market for educational accessibility tools is too niche to justify significant investment. You should pivot to serving mainstream educational markets. But I had learned from my mentors that persistence and belief in your vision are often more important than immediate external validation. I continued developing and refining my platform while building a user base of schools and students who desperately needed the accessibility features that mainstream companies ignored. The breakthrough came during my third year in business when a large urban school district agreed to pilot my platform in schools serving predominantly low-income and English language learning students. The results were extraordinary. Student engagement increased by 40%, completion rates improved by 35%, and teachers reported that the platform had eliminated many of the technology barriers that had previously prevented effective digital learning. More importantly, the pilot program demonstrated that accessibility features didn't just help struggling students, they improved the learning experience for all students by providing multiple ways to engage with content and accommodating different learning preferences. The success of the pilot program led to rapid expansion. Within 2 years, Inclusive Tech was serving over 500 school districts across the United States, and our platform was being used by more than 2 million students annually. But the real validation came when I received a call from the National Education Foundation informing me that I had been selected to receive the National Excellence in Innovation Award for developing technology that had transformed educational accessibility and demonstrated that inclusive design benefits all learners. The award ceremony was held in Washington, D.C., with an audience of education leaders, policymakers, and innovators from across the country. As I walked onto the stage to accept the award, I thought about all the people who had told me I would never succeed. Mrs. Henderson, who had told my parents I wasn't academically gifted. Mr. Patterson, who had steered me away from challenging courses. Mr. Brooks, who had said I wasn't cut out for technical fields. Mark Chan, who had dismissed accessibility features as unnecessary complications, but I also thought about the people who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Dr. Kim, who had seen potential that others missed. Dr. Martinez, who had helped me understand that my perspective was valuable, and all the students who were now succeeding academically because they had access to technology that met them where they were rather than expecting them to adapt to inflexible systems. This award, I said in my acceptance speech, represents more than individual achievement. It represents the potential that exists in every student who has been told they're not smart enough, not capable enough, or not worthy of high expectations. Innovation happens when we stop accepting limitations and start creating solutions. As I held the award and looked out at the audience, I realized that my journey from a discouraged high school student to a nationally recognized innovator had taught me the most important lesson of my life. The people who tell you that you'll never succeed are usually the ones who have accepted limitations in their own lives and can't imagine possibilities beyond their own experience. My success hadn't just proven them wrong about my potential. It had demonstrated that their entire framework for assessing human capability was fundamentally flawed. The girl who had been told she would never amount to anything had not only succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but had also created opportunities for millions of other students to exceed the limitations that others had tried to impose on them. Standing on that stage, I understood that this award was not the end of my journey, but rather the beginning of a new chapter where I could use my platform and resources to challenge the systemic barriers that prevent talented young people from reaching their potential. The people who had doubted me had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, the motivation to prove that their narrow vision of human potential was not only wrong, but harmful to countless individuals who deserved better. My story had become proof that success is not determined by where you start, but by your willingness to keep moving forward despite the obstacles and doubts that others place in your path. Warning: legal disclaimer: this story is completely fictional and was created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental.